Hey everyone, this is Jennifer with Midwest Wilderness Connections. Today I'm down at the Pike Run Wildlife Area near Nichols, Iowa in Muscatine County. And real quick here, I want to talk about bluejoint woolly sedge meadows. It's a plant community that a lot of times to the untrained eye may look like a Canary Grass stand, but there are differences and you can kind of see it here, so I'm going to explain. If you see this grass, it is almost monotypic, which again people think is maybe a red flag, and it's not. This particular community is dominated by, like I said, a Canada bluejoint. Over here we do have some prairie cordgrass. There are a few other grasses mixed in here and there, like the Calamagrostis. But when you look at these bluejoint wet meadows, you can see that they look somewhat hummocky, like the grasses are in these clumps, and you see them blow and they just wave. But you look at the leaves, I'm going to walk in closer here, and you can see these leaves are a lot thinner than those of canary grass. And so in comparison, there is some canary grass right here. See, it's got much thicker, wider leaves. Here's some more. Let me get out of the light. Here's some more compared to, you see the Canada bluejoint right next to it, much thinner leaves. And they can form these large, very dominant wet meadow communities. And you find a lot of, you can see the little shrubs out there on the edge. That's indigo bush, the wetland form that's kind of a taller, woody, kind of a subshrub, so it's more of a fruticosa. These meadows are also usually have a lot of swamp milkweed, which is great. And I find monarchs using those milkweeds in these bluejoint meadows quite often. So when people are talking about restoring habitat for species like the monarch, you got to think about land use, and we need to get as much habitat restored on private lands as we can and at our public lands. And you got to think about, if you've got somebody who's got working land, they're using it to make a living, maybe it's farming, things of that sort, they're going to be much less likely to want to set aside their really fertile soils that they can get a crop off of. But if you think of places like this, these wet meadows, they're wet, they're soggy. In wet years, they may plant, but it'll drown. It may flood. They have to go in and replant. Then they're always worrying about a tile system or a ditch system that requires maintenance. These are sites that, if they had an alternative, like a set-aside program, they would. So when I was with the NRCS, I helped enroll a lot of cornfields that had those kinds of problems. Really soggy soil, always kind of an issue. The landowner wasn't quite sure they wanted to spend the time and effort on improving the old tile system, and they could do something like this where they could set aside that land, seed it to natives. We would seed these bluejoint woolly sedge wet meadows with a lot of swamp milkweed in the mix, and we would get that habitat out. So it's kind of a win-win for everyone. And so one of my pitches is, if we want to get a lot of land in fast, working with private landowners, our wetland programs, like we were using the Wetlands Reserve Easement Program. It used to be WRP, it's WREP now, and the last Farm Bill, they changed up the acronyms a little bit, but it's basically the same thing. So that, I was just out here. I thought this was a really great place to kind of go through an example, and how focusing on this type of habitat, finding those areas, the other places like sand prairies, really sandy areas, that's kind of another problem because they're real droughty. They don't get a crop off, they may not get a crop off it every year. It's an issue for them. That's a great place to go in and do some sand prairie restoration if they can put it in a set-aside program. And so, like I said, look for those win-wins. And I think, we do a lot of work that way. Like I said, I was working with the NRCS, which is Natural Resources Conservation Service. That's a USDA agency. that works with private landowners, primarily agricultural landowners. So that's my little soapbox. I will let you guys go, but like I said, I thought this was a great place to stop and talk about this a little bit. See you guys later.